2014 to 2019 in each of the weeks of the year. So if you see, the leaves are pretty much consistently on the tree throughout the year. 80% of the trees usually show the presence of leaves throughout the year. Then in the first few weeks of the year, between week 1 and week 14 is when we see a peak in flowers. And then between week 10 and week 20, maybe, yeah, week 20, we see a peak in fruits. This you might find a little bit strange because week 13 to 20 corresponds to April, May. So you might think that's early for a peak in mango fruiting. And you will be right, because this data is highly influenced by the Kerala information. So in most of this information is 85% of this information is actually coming from Kerala. And Kerala, because it is so far south, the flowering and fruiting is much earlier than in the rest of the country. So on average, we see a seasonality where the fruiting is peaking in April, May, rather than May, June, July, which is what we expect in the rest of India. So to sort of understand whether this was actually because of Kerala, we looked at latitudinal patterns in mango fruiting. And this we did with the help of 4 BioBlitz events, where on the same 2 to 4 days on different months, which is December, March, June, and September in 2019, people had to go out and observe trees and record that. And we plotted the fruiting trees and the non-fruiting trees of mango across the different latitudes to see what was happening. So if you see here, all these gray dots are basically all the trees that were recorded across the different BioBlitz events. And all the yellow dots are the trees that had fruits on them. So if you see in December 2018, fruits were reported only in southern India. By March, more and more of the peninsular India had started reporting fruits. By June, all of India was reporting fruits. Across India, there were fruits. And then by September, again, it had gone down to the southern latitudes. So in Kerala, in the southern states, there were nearly always some of the other trees that were fruiting. And the seasonality of fruiting was much higher in central and northern India, where there was, only in June you could actually see fruiting trees. So this is very valuable to understand that, okay, something, as we know mango to be such a seasonal fruit, and the seasonality of this fruiting is actually different across the different latitudes. Then we also try to investigate whether actually we can capture some climate change signals on the flowering of different species. And for this, we decided to use a cultural reference point because, just a background story. In the state of Kerala, the New Year is Vishu, which happens between 13th and 15th of April. Across many decades or maybe even hundreds of years, this festival has been associated with the presence of flowers in amaltas trees. And the flower is also used in the festivities between the 13th and 15th of April. Over the past few years, people have been noticing that amaltas is not flowering during Vishu, and that the flowers are not there on the trees by the time Vishu comes. And so much so that people are resorting to buying flowers from the market, or they have to buy plastic substitutes in the market, and that has really culturally hurt people. Because imagine, something that you could pluck from a tree in your backyard, and you have to substitute that as a plastic, something fake. So we decided to look at season watch data to see whether actually there was some difference in the timing of flowers that was happening in Kerala. And so we looked at all the flowering trees in the state of Kerala over from 2014 to 2019 to see whether there was any change in flowering in the species. So here you can see 2 lines actually. The darker line indicates a flowering peak where the entire tree had many flowers, right? And the light gray shows a trend of flowers being present. So they could be few or many. They were just simply present on the tree, but it was not in full bloom. So if you see, and this vertical line here indicates the Vishu week every year. So here, if you see the flowering peak, although it coincides with Vishu, the peak of lots and lots of flowers being there on the tree has shifted a little bit before Vishu. So it is happening just a little bit, just a few days before Vishu. So by the time Vishu is happening, many trees have uh, gone out of that full bloom stage. And maybe this is what is being perceived by people as having less flowers on the Amalthas trees. So there are several caveats to this. We may not have enough sample size to actually say conclusively that this is a pattern. Secondly, we don't know what are the environmental drivers of this pattern. If at all this is a pattern, then is it because of rain or temperature or because of something larger like climate change? We don't have anything, we can't say anything about that right now. But the more we continue to observe these trees, the more we continue to look for correlations with environmental factors, we may be able to say more conclusively in the future that actually there is a shift in flowering in this species, and this is because of certain types of environmental conditions. And this type of cultural reference is very important for a country like India because we don't have any formal records of seasonality of species. Most of our seasonality information comes from anecdotes, from stories, from folklore, and from practices, cultural practices of utilizing certain types of trees at certain times of the year. For instance, the flame of the forest tree is used for making red dye during Holi in North India. So if you find fewer trees flowering during Holi, during that time where it was usually found to be flowering, you can maybe say, okay, there might be something here. Let's look at it more carefully. Is the flowering date for this species changing? Similarly, the neem tree is very important in peninsular India for this festival called Ugadi in Karnataka. Again, the flower is used for the festivities, and there have been anecdotal reports that the flowers are not available during Ugadi, which typically happens in March, April. And this is, of course, the mahua tree, which has a lot of cultural importance in central India because people consume the flowers either directly or by converting it into liquor, and which is very important culturally. And people have been reporting that the quantum of fruiting, the timing of fruiting is all going a little bit off. And that could be, again, because of erratic weather patterns. And this is, again, something that we can capture if enough information is gathered on the season watch. So I would actually like to leave you with this, and you can, all of you can become citizen scientists actually by contributing information to Season Watch. Go check out our website. You can follow us on social media and keep track of all the exciting things that other members of this very large citizen science community are doing. We have a very inspiring set of educators across the country who do great work with their students, and we often speak about them on our social media and in our newsletters. So you might want to look that up. And yeah, for any queries, do write to us on our email given over here, or you can contact us on our WhatsApp number. Yeah. So I think I'll end with that, and I'll take questions if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Geeta, I have one question. Like
Yes,
for mango trees, there are different kind of species. Hapus we get
yes,
early March, April.
yes,
This Langada or that Totapuri we get late till monsoon. There are
yes.
few different
Mm.
species of maua. So how you are in app and they flower at different timings that we have observed. So how that species we have to select in particular if mango is there then because the fruiting and flowering will change the timing.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. So we are not considering varieties of mango actually right now. That's because there are several 10, I think maybe more than 100 varieties of mango in India itself. And we need to have lots of observations from lots of trees of one kind to be able to make any inference about that species. So if we were to subdivide mango into the different varieties, we might get only one or two, trees representing each of the varieties. So in order to avoid that, we combine all varieties of a species as the same. So mango includes hapus and totapuri and imam pasand, all the varieties of mango that are there, and the forest varieties also, the wild varieties, which are not cultivated varieties. So it includes everything. And this is
They may
because
flower at different time, no?
they may, yes. Yes, you're absolutely right.
That that can lead to different conclusion that this may be due to season watch or something else.
Yeah, if
Um,
you have more cultivation of happy, then you will get more fruiting earlier, something like that. You mean, Neelam, right?
Yes, and some
sure.
fruits will late flower because they are tend to do as per their species. We have seen two mahua trees in our region. One
Mhm.
flowers very late. 1 month difference is there, and both are them are wild.
Right. There is, yeah. So what you're talking about is also inherent variability within the same species also.
Yes,
Some of our citizen scientists report trees that are of the same species that are standing right next to each other, behaving completely differently. Exactly what you said. So, like
Yeah.
one tree will be flowering in March, and then other tree will be flowering like almost a month later in April. So this is precisely why we need large sample size. We need many trees of the same species being recorded, so that firstly we know the range, the starting date that any tree starts flowering and the ending date. So which can span months. It can be over several months. It can be over 2 or 3 months also. But that is the range for the species. Now, what we are trying to detect is whether that range is changing, or whether the peak, whether the proportion of trees showing most amount of flowering or most amount of fruiting, whether that is changing, is what we are after. And for that, we need lots of trees. So thousands and thousands of trees have to be recorded over a long period of time to be able to conclude.
Similar to what
uh,
Neelam said, we have a kadamba tree in our vicinity. And typically you see kadamba flowers during like heavy rains, right? July or August. But
Yes.
this tree, we could see flowers in April and also in July. The same tree flowered twice in a year.
Yes. Yes.
So, how do you capture, or like how do we make sense of such incidents?
Okay, I will give a analogy. Supposing we want to find out the average, uh, okay, supposing there is a school and there is a sixth standard in that school, and we want to find out the average height of the sixth standard students uh, in that particular school. So what the examples that you are giving are that of individual trees, right? Individual trees. So supposing we go into the
Yeah,
sixth standard, and we look at the shortest student and say, oh, this is the average height. Or we look at the tallest student and say, oh, this is the average height. We will be wrong, right? Because that is the shortest student
yeah.
and the other one is the tallest student. So our sample size of 2 has yielded us correct answers about the height of the sixth standard students. What we instead need to do is sample. The class has 40 students. So we sample at least 20 or 25 students from that class. We get the heights of all of these students, and then we get the average. And average will be closer to most of the heights of the students in that class, than the shortest of the tallest students. It's exactly the same for trees. So what you are looking at that particular individual showing its own individual behavior. But for the species, to get at an average, we need to sample 20, 30, 40,000, 10,000 trees to be able to say that on average, these trees flower between March and July, something like that. I don't know. I hope that analogy makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
but
so
like,
the idea
yeah.
is to understand something.
No, I mean, it's not just early, but twice. Like there were flowers again in July.
Sure. So for your individual tree, for your own tree, you will be able to detect these two peaks. If you were to look at it in some visual way, you will be able to see the two peaks. But for the species Kadamba as a whole, there will be a starting of the flowering season and the end of the flowering season. So
Okay.
for the species, it will be start and end.
I want to ask a very different question, like, for the Tantana plant. See, the thing is, we remove then by uprooting and all, and they're supposed to be still holding on to it. Is there something like if we plant something stronger after removing Tantani, there is something which will be stronger so that they can come back? I mean, they do not have the place or habitat to grow. Will that be helping to?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, this is what people aim for when they restore habitats which have been invaded. So they not only remove the invasive species, but also try to replace it with other species which were either originally present in that region before the invasion happened, or certain types of species that will replace the invasive species functionally. So, for example, if lots of butterflies and birds have become used to that plant over there, that invasive plant over there, then if you're removing that plant, you should replace it with another plant which provides the same function, which also has flowers
and which is
fruits,
native.
Which is native, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Native.
absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
So what can be replacement for Tantani?
Depends on where you are. If the original habitat was a open forest, you might want to replace Tantani with grasses. If the original habitat was small shrubs, you will want to replace it with fruiting shrubs or flowering shrubs that were there before. If it's an urban landscape, I think you can replace it with pretty much anything, any other native species. It doesn't matter. So if it's a wetland, you might want to plant wetland species like reeds or other tall monocot cypress species. So it depends on where you're replacing.
One more thing, when we uproot it, after uprooting, how do we make sure? Because if you throw it out somewhere, will they grow up again? I mean, what is the short way of getting rid of, so as to make them not grow again? Is it that if they dry out and then it will not grow at all, if you just uproot it and leave it?
Yes. So
Because
most places, what they do is they put it upside down. So the root should not come in touch with the soil because lantana can also do suckering. It can do this thing called suckering, where low-lying branches or live root, if it comes back in contact with the soil, it will become a new plant. So as long as the lower branches and the root are not in touch with the soil, you can you just put the plant upside down. To make extra sure that the plant is dead, people also burn it. They burn it off. If there is any other way of using the wood, let's say as fuel wood, or if you, make it into like lantana furniture or something, and use it that way, that is also good. To just remove it from that place and use it in some other way.
Yeah, or make briquettes, like how Isha tells us.
Yes, make bridges.
Actually, if there is some use of lantana, we won't have that much of a problem. I think people will uproot it by themselves.
Yeah, actually, yes. And there have been instances where people have gotten used to an invasive plant and they started protecting it because it is of use to them. So those things have also happened.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it works both ways.
it works both ways.
If we uproot it, won't like those. Usually, lantana has those fruits and seeds, so it will again those seeds. That risk is always there.
Yes, 100% that risk is there. So the thing is that you will have to keep doing it over a long, like some time, till the time that the soil is clear of seeds and uh, so if you're talking about an urban landscape, it should not be very difficult. In a park or a garden, you can keep uprooting smaller seedlings that
Uh,
keep coming up.
I was thinking of Pune hills. Like we have so much of lantana on those hills.
Oh, that'll be difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you might want to do is clear in patches and then revisit the same area after some time, maybe after a year or 2 years, and remove whatever else is coming back up.
Okay. As you said, there are lots of bulbuls there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And bulbul
Yes, when
can,
they are young.
yes. And even if like a plant is present half a kilometer away, a bulbul can potentially disperse the seed back into a place from where lantana is removed. So it's not a one-time thing. One-time removal will not work. You'll have to continuously do it for a few years for it to be lantana free. Or the other thing is,
Actually,
of course,
there
to
is so
replace.
much of yeah, yeah. But there is so much of lantana, and there is cosmos, and there is ranmari. So there is no competition amongst these three. Like all of them always thrive.
Cosmos is no. I think lantana can easily outcompete a species like Cosmos because
Okay.
Cosmos is a herb and non-woody and not perennial. No, I think it's annual.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that can lantana can easily outcompete because in the competition between a light-loving woody plant and a light-loving non-woody plant, a light-loving woody plant will be more victorious because it can outgrow. It can grow and shade the other plant.
Yeah.
So,
Hello,
but
this is
there
Priti
might be
Shah.
lots of other native shrubs like I don't know if Flugia is found there. Flugia, Leucopyrus. I don't know what the common name is. Or some of these other species that have small bird dispersed fruits, those can be used as a replacement, perhaps. I'm
Hello,
sorry,
this is Priti Shah. Yes,
yeah, hi.
hi. I just wanted to know. I had read somewhere that they are making furniture from lantana nowadays. Are you aware
Yes,
of it?
yes,
And
absolutely.
how useful it is, like for nature and even for using the furniture.
So this way of utilizing lantana was pioneered by this organization called ATRI in
Hmm.
Bangalore, where they
Hmm.
worked
Hmm.
with the Soliga community of Hills in Karnataka. The Soliga
Okay.
community were dependent on cane, which
Hmm.
is a forest species, for various things. And because lantana was taking over this region in very large numbers, they thought,
Hmm.
okay, supposing we shift to lantana, will that help the community firstly to reduce dependence on cane, and secondly also generate income for that community.
Hmm. Hmm.
So there was for several years they were manufacturing lantana furniture. I have used lantana furniture and it's really great. I think I have
Is it?
yes, I have a
Okay.
very sturdy stool. I've had
Hmm.
it for several years now,
Hmm.
and it
Hmm.
looks very cane-like.
It
It
looks like
resembles
cane
cane.
only?
Yes,
Does
yes,
it? Yeah, it resembles cane. Okay,
it
okay,
resembles
okay,
cane.
okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it has the
And
same
same sturdy
rustic.
like cane. Hmm.
Sorry,
Same sturdy like cane.
same. Yes,
The life.
pretty sturdy.
Mhm.
Yeah. It might be slightly lighter than cane.
Okay.
Yeah. But there
I
are
just
other groups, I
checked.
think, across India now who
Hmm.
are using lantana to make furniture. I don't know
Mhm.
all of their names, but it's
Mhm.
available. I'm sure a simple Google search will
Mhm.
find you some places.
Yes. Thank you.
I just checked Flugia, that is Pandharfai, that is there on our Tekris, but not in the numbers like Lantana. Nowhere comparable to that.
So,
Geeta?
Yes.
Yes, I think Gauri just mentioned that Flugia
Uh,
plant is known Pandharfoi locally, and
oh, I
it is
see.
not invasive.
Correct.
No,
I
it is
mean,
not very common. Like it is
not
there
very
on
common.
Pune
Okay.
Hills, but not comparable to Lantana in its occurrence.
Right. So Flugia is a great substitute species for lantana because bulbuls love the fruit. In fact, most small-sized frugivorous birds love the fruit of Flugia. When I did my study in this place in Andhra, and I found that Flugia was many times more popular than lantana as a fruiting plant. So if you already have that plant on the hill, maybe that's something that you might want to consider as a replacement for
And
lantana.
can we
Gauri, but we'll
consider
have to.
that also for butterfly gardens also Flugia will do?
Right.
Maybe not butterflies, but all kinds of other pollinators. The flower is
Okay.
small. It's not very.
Yeah.
It's a whatever green white colored flower. It
Hmm.
attracts other types of pollinators. You'll find lots of bees and flies and bugs
Mhm.
which will come to flowers.
Yeah.
And maybe moths. I don't know, but maybe moths at night might also be coming.
Lots of insects are there on Flugia. Today only we saw it. Right,
Yeah,
Isha?
nice.
Yes, we have many of them on Tikadi, but not in all patches. All the invasive patches don't have Flugia.
Correct. Yeah, it might be replaced very rapidly by lantana.
This I had one basic question that you had said in the beginning, Geeta ma'am,
Mhm.
that herbivores do not feed on these invasive species. So, I mean, ecosystem wise also it's disruptive, isn't it? Then the herbivores will not go to these large areas. They'll avoid them. And then in forests, if these things are there, then what kind of repercussions might be there in the ecological, that is in the entire food chain?
Yes, you're absolutely right. People are in fact very afraid of the repercussions. Some people who have been working in the south have also been afraid that it might lead to more elephant-human
Yes, yes.
conflict or elephant-wildlife conflict because animals might move out of the forest searching for food. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There are some systematic studies which have looked at forage plants,
Okay.
but that was some time ago. Like these are older studies, but they didn't find any too dramatic change in the forage plants. But I don't know if a study is done now, maybe they might find some impacts
Okay.
on forage
Okay.
plants.
Yeah. Thank you. You really gave us a good insight about this. We enjoyed your talk totally.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Jitnyasa here. I actually saw the video by Atri about like the making the furniture from lantana, and I was
Oh, nice.
wondering if they have worked out the economics and if we can actually give out like contracts and get the lantana removed by some furniture making company where it's a win-win. It's a short-term contract, like you come every year and take it for 5 years, and that solves the problem.
They should not start cultivating lantana for furniture, Jignasa.
Yeah, and I think
That's
And I
Well,
think it will
we
require,
need to like take that chance. Like they will know the invasiveness, of course. Will make them aware. And if like cane is replacing lantana, then they can like it's not sort of taking away their what like the
Come in agriculture,
right?
like
Yeah.
tomatoes and potatoes.
but I think,
And
because
the
I
maize
think,
crop, which is destroying Amazon forests now, because this huge animal farms, they feed on maize. So open up a commercial market for anything and then it blows out of proportion. I mean, it has been. So it's
yeah,
very
but
That
dicey.
is,
Yeah.
but I
that's a
think,
very real thing.
yeah, but I think it will require certain kind of maturity of lantana because the thickness and everything. So it is going to take a while for them to collect it and get it on the furniture.
Right.
And they will spread in the meantime. It will be spreading itself a lot. By
Hmm.
the time it is useful for a furniture.
So, by the
So
way, like the places where lantana is most abundant, which is our protected areas, you are not allowed to harvest lantana from there. So there is no chance that any commercial use of those stems can be made. So the only places you can take lantana from is non-protected areas, where anyway people are there and they may be managing, and it may not be such a big problem.
But then
it's
doesn't the forest department recognize lantana as threat?
absolutely it does. And in forest department management plans, there's always a section on removing invasive species. But there is only so much they can remove, right? I mean, it's many hundreds. If it's a many hundreds of hectares large protected area, and you have manpower to clear only 10 hectares, there is no way you can control, or
You
manage
can
that scale.
you can harvest cane, right? Non-timber food produce, forest produce can be harvested by the forest rights under forest rights. So something like that can maybe work out for lantana.
I think small scale harvesting might work, but like for commercial purposes, like for commercial use and making furniture, might be, I don't think it will be possible.
So
So
requires kind of
NTFP, because
policy
like,
intervention, right?
yes, possibly. Yeah.
So Isha,
But I would recommend I mean, if you're interested in those things, you might want to look up A3, Ashoka Trust for
Right,
Research in,
yes.
yeah. So
So
their
in
website.
Ecological Society, we had lectures by A3. So yes, we can
Okay.
definitely, yeah.
Yes, you can please reach out to them. And I
Right,
think
right.
some people are also working on the policy aspects of management. I will not be a good person to answer those questions.
so Isha, only 3 minutes remaining. So maybe if we have one or two
Yeah,
questions,
if
we
there
can
are
take it and we can
any
close it.
questions, yeah. If there are any
What
more
about
questions,
Subabul? What about Subabul, like big trees, invasive trees?
Subabul is bad. Oh, trees are very, oh, I think they're the worst. I mean, because any woody plant is difficult. Once it's there in the ecosystem, it's just very difficult, and they change the ecosystem dramatically. So one tree which has run berserk across the country is Prosopis juliflora, and Subabul is not so bad yet because it's mostly in urban areas. But Prosopis is everywhere. Like without any help, it is just spread across the country. So it's very much more a bigger challenge than shrubs. Trees are much
What's
worse.
the common name for it?
Prosopis, Vilaiti Kikar, I think it's called. Vilaiti Kikar.
Subabul is that only, no?
No, Subabul
Vilayati
is
babul.
Vilayati
no.
babul. नहीं,
Vilayati
Subabul is
babul, yeah.
Vilayati babul. हाँ.
Vilayati babul, yeah.
Subabul is Lucina leucocephala, and Prosopis is Prosopis juliflora. So different species.
Yeah. Vilayati babul.
Yeah.
so unfortunately, we are, constrained by time, and unless there are, more questions, we will have to log in again. But I think, Geeta, all of us loved the session, and I'm sure
Thank you.
many of my friends here and in the group who could not be part of this session would download the app and start be a part of this effort. So we are going to make an appeal on the group, and I'm sure that some of us will contribute data to the project. And we'll be able to see the conclusions over years, and these studies would be used as references for so many other projects. So thanks a lot for all of this.
Thank you. Thanks once again, Isha. Thanks so much for inviting me here. It has been great interacting with all of you. Quickly, we have a Season Watch Maharashtra WhatsApp group. If people from this group would like to join that, please let us know and we'll add you to that.
Yeah. You can just ping me and I'll get you connected with Geeta and the group.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Thanks